Welcome to Natural Habitat Adventures Daily Dose of Nature. Today's topic, English nature. Discover 5 habitats of the Cotswolds. Presented by NatHab Expedition Leader, Bella Somerset. I'm your host, Rob Mess. Thank you so much for joining us here today. Take it away, Bella.
Thanks, Rob. Bit about myself. I'm an expedition leader with NatHab, and I started as a support guide to Hattie, who's the girl in the left photo next to me, who is also still an expedition leader. I was able to absorb her wonderful encyclopedic knowledge of the Cotswolds and nature. I've been working tours in England since 2017, and I grew up in the Cotswolds. And I live in a village called Badminton, where my mum runs an organic market garden just next door. So I get to raid all her yummy organic vegetables. Archaic as the British way may be, my father is custodian of an estate and runs a farm using conventional practices, as well as land management schemes, including a deer park, which we will look at. I'm a trained mountain leader, yoga and Pilates teacher, and outside of the tourist season, I volunteer for a mental health charity, leading walks focused on the healing power of nature. And throughout the year, I support addicts with eating issues to find recovery. So why the Cotswolds? So the Cotswolds is an area of outstanding natural beauty, or the acronym AONB. The Cotswolds is a protective area for its scenic value. It is 80% farmland and has more rigid planning controls due to its AONB status. Other protected areas in the UK may be protected for their scenic value, geological value, or biodiversity value. So what is England's iconic landscape? You're thinking hedged fields, small copse of woodland, rolling hills due to the Cotswold escarpment, a river running through the valley, that picture postcard image of a village complete with a church. Conservation is different in the UK, as the landscapes and habitats that we have come to treasure is due to humankind bending nature to our preference over time. The agricultural revolution was roughly 6,000 years ago, and it meant the clearing of woodlands for arable and pastoral farming. Industrial revolutions between the mid-17th century up to early 19th century saw a migration of people to cities and towns for employment. More recently, with heavy farmland machinery, introduction of chemicals, and the loss of hedgerows, the landscapes have shifted away from sustainability even further. In England, many of our iconic environments and habitats are created and managed. However, like most countries who frequently don't achieve environmental goals set in this globalized world, we are also experiencing challenges of climate change, soil depletion, biodiversity decline, and water pollution, affecting long-term sustainability of our land and damages to our health. So why travel to England for conservation tourism? We've got wonderful rewilding and biodiversity restoration schemes, interesting land management practices like parkland, and controversial ones, but we'll look at some of the hunting practices that offer some silver linings. And our national treasures like Isabella Tree, who wrote Wilding, Merlin Sheldrake, who wrote Tangled Life, and David Attenborough, who needs no introduction. And if you haven't seen his Wild Isles documentary, docuseries, I really encourage you to, or documentary. So Britain has the largest membership of wildlife protection organisations in Europe. However, it has amongst the smallest amount of land nationally protected as nature reserves. We've got wonderful conservation charities like the National Trust, Wildlife Trust, Woodland Trust, Wildfowl and Wetlands Trust, Friends of the Earth, among others. So I'll connect the places and the experiences on our NatHab tour in the Cotswolds with each habitat we explore. So we'll look at rivers, and we'll look at the River Windrush and the River Coln, which feed into the River Thames. And then we'll look at the River Wye, which feeds into the Severn Estuary. On our woodland habitat, we'll look at Wytham Woods and Westonbirt. With our estuary, the Severn Estuary, which is home to the Slimbridge Wildfowl and Wetlands Trust. And when we get into the habitat of farmland, we'll look at the Farm Ed, Highgrove, which is King Charles's estate, and Forbidden Fruit and Veg, which is my mum's organic market garden. And parkland, we'll look at the Deer Park at Broadway Tower and Badminton. So starting with rivers. On our second day, we do a morning walk from Minster Lovel along the river Windrush. On a few occasions, we have crossed paths with the founder of WASP, which is an acronym for Windrush Against Sewage Pollution, while he walks his dog. The river Windrush joins the River Thames at Newbridge in Oxfordshire, and the privately owned company Thames Water has been dumping untreated sewage into the Thames waterways, alongside practicing a mismanagement of flooding precautions in sewage networks. This is very irresponsible given the experience of inevitable storms. Ofwat, which is the body responsible for economic regulation of the privatised water and sewage industry in England and Wales, suggested a penalty for Thames Water of 104 million following a sewage investigation of the Thames. This investigation involved two other private water companies, Yorkshire and Northumberland Water, alongside Thames Water, totalling a fine of 168 million given in August of 2024. Sewage dumping is becoming a systemic problem in the UK, as we're experiencing corrupt companies in a corrupt business market where cutting corners seems to be the norm to remain competitive. We also meet the River Windrush again at the charming village of Bourton-on-the-Water, which is known as the Venice of the Cotswolds. And you'll notice the Bourton-on-the-Water is that lower picture, and the one on the left is the River Windrush, and then the River Coln is the one in the top corner. We meet the River Coln at Bybury. Bybury was once described by William Morris, who's a famous textile designer, as the most beautiful village in England. The river is abundant with brown trout, which resides in fresh water all year round. On our walk at Bybury via Arlington Row, we have been lucky enough to see a waterfall, which is a threatened species. It lacks the long, scaly tail of the similarly sized brown rat. There has been a 90% depopulation in the last 50 years. The usual suspects pertain habitat loss and pollution, in addition to predation by the American minks, which escaped from fur farms in the UK. Eventually, the River Coln flows into the River Thames. We do not associate the Thames as a salmon river, but in 1586, the River Thames was full of fat and sweet salmon. No river in Europe was able to exceed it. But by 1821, Thames salmon was wholly extinct. When we talk about estuaries, we'll look at the River Wye and their once abundant salmon population. A reality across most biodiversity stats is we have the continuous lowering of standards and the acceptance of degraded natural ecosystems. This is known as the shifting baseline syndrome. This term was coined in 1995 by fisheries scientist Daniel Pooley, who noticed the baseline state of the fishery was set at the start of their careers rather than fish populations in their original state. So looking at river pollution, we have sewage dumping, which we talked about, and the experience of agricultural runoff from surrounding chemically sprayed fields. This causes algae blooms in rivers, blocking light and life. And pesticides reaching rivers have unintended knock-on deaths of small organisms, thus affecting the ecosystem food chain. And soil depletion from farmland and the removal of trees and hedgerows has reduced the ability of water retention, causing more flooding. So we'll look at woodlands, and starting with the oak tree. Oak trees grow for 300 years, they mature for another 300 years, and then they decay for another 300 years. When an oak tree begins to hollow with age, the oak really comes into its own as an ecosystem. As the heartwood, which is the dead structural inner part, rots down, the slow release of nutrients give the trunk a new lease on life. Oak saplings are light demanding, and any seedling that manages to take root beneath the parent canopy is doomed to fail. An oak tree forms a symbiotic partnership with the jay, which is the bird in the bottom right, which buries acorns at the base of thorny bushes like hawthorn, hammering them deep into the ground where they are less likely to be found by mice and squirrels. and incidentally most likely to take root. The thorn bush is therefore considered the mother of the oak. And then beech trees. 250 years is a reasonable longevity for a beech tree. The young leaves have a pleasant citrus salad taste, and due to its thick canopy, 80% of sunlight is cut off by the foliage. This excessive shade provides space for a different ecosystem. Bluebells overcome the problem of the beech's excessive shade by completing its growing and flowering season before the tree comes into leaf. Bluebells seasonally respond due to change in day length, a term called photoperiodism, versus other plants that begin spring growth by the effect of the increase in temperature, roughly 5 to 9 degrees Celsius or 41 to 48 degrees Fahrenheit. Bluebells survive perennially as bulbs beneath the surface. The beech tree has the most mycorrhizal relationships of the UK trees and is therefore one of the best trees to find mushrooms under in autumn. We'll look at mycorrhizal networks. An oak tree supports 108 different types of fungi above and below ground. The root system of the tree needs a network of mycorrhizal fungi to travel to gather nutrients. Ectomycorrhizal fungi only form on 2% of plants, including oaks, 2% of plant species, including oak and beech. It is from ectomycorrhizals. Their fungal filaments extend deep into the soil, gathering nutrients and water in exchange for in exchange for carbohydrates. Edible fungi like chanterelles, truffles, and porcini specialize in the uptake of nitrogen and associate with woody plants. Relatively new research has found that trees send warnings to fellow trees about crucial matters such as insect invasion. This message is transmitted underground by associated mycorrhiza. This communication channel has been termed the Wood Wide Web. Britain has 12% tree cover as opposed to 33% in Germany. Only 2.5% of the UK is considered ancient woodland. That's woodland that has persisted relatively undisturbed by human development since 1600 or earlier in England. An ancient woodland indicator species would be the bluebells. All parts of the bluebell plant contain toxic glycosides that are poisonous to humans, dogs, horses, and cattle. And wild garlic, which is the one in the left picture, which is taken from Wytham woods, which is an edible plant, and the flower and leaf can be eaten raw or made into a yummy wild garlic pesto. And dog's mercury, which is the top right, is also toxic. And we got the woodland anemones in the bottom middle photo. So mushrooms. So the top left and the top right are both lion's mane mushroom. The top left looks maybe more like a lion's mane, but the top right is actually what is in its prime. And these photos were taken near Badminton, where I live in the South Cotswolds. It's a weakly parasitic fungus and grows on old, rotten or dying hardwood, especially beech, oak and chestnut. And it causes white rot, and it therefore a vital part of nutrient recycling in our ecosystems. And it's considered good for brain health when ingested. The top middle one is the orange bolete or the aspen bolete. Although known to be associated with oak, this mushroom can also be found under poplar, aspen, beech or birch. It's a good tasting, firmly fresh mushroom and must be well cooked before consumption. We made this into a nice mushroom risotto. Porcini is a type of bolete, or termed penny bun in the UK or king bolete elsewhere. And you can see the nibbles on that top middle mushroom that other animals in the woodland are enjoying its edibility. And the chicken of the woods is the yellow mushroom on the bottom left and the bottom right. This photo was taken from Wytham Woods, a place we visit on the second day of our tour just outside Oxford. Chicken of the woods fungal threads will penetrate into the oak's heartwood, but also likes beech, chestnut, cherry, and even yew. And great care should be taken if you're collecting from the poisonous yew. And it grows in large tiers on trunks and stumps. It's best eaten young, as the older specimens become woody and bitter to taste. It should be cooked thoroughly before consumption, and some people can have an allergic reaction, roughly 1 in 25 of us. So only a small amount should be tried when first tasting this mushroom. It has a mushroomy flavour and is said to taste like chicken to some. It has the same texture as chicken and is good in stews and as a veggie meat. Beefsteak fungus, which is the bottom middle one, and this photo is taken from Lower Woods, which is an ancient woodland in South Gloucestershire, and it's managed by the Gloucestershire Wildlife Trust. And it grows on living or dead oak and it's sweet chestnut. It's acidic to taste, but similar texture to steak and can be eaten raw. So the mushrooms we see are just the fruiting body of the fungi, a way for the fungi to disperse their spores to reproduce. The fungi organism lives below the earth or in the heartwood of alive or dead trees. Fungi can also live underwater. In the UK, none of our mushrooms are poisonous to taste, but some are deadly if ingested. Young puffballs can get mistaken for the poisonous deathcap. Youth is the time to pick and eat most mushrooms, as that is when they are at their most delicious. Bracket fungi. Most bracket fungi are primarily saprotrophic, meaning they break down dead wood, or parasitic, meaning they infect living trees. Bracket fungi, also known as polypores or conchs, are the mushroom-forming sporing bodies, with their pores or tubes on their underside. Bracket fungi are the only organisms able to break down tough compounds that make up lignin found in wood. Therefore, they are vital for nutrient cycling and carbon dioxide release in forest ecosystems. Some fungi are severe pathogens to trees. Amongst one of the oldest and largest living organisms is a honey fungus in Oregon National Park. Based on its current growth rate, the fungus is estimated to be 2,400 years old, but could be as ancient as 8,650 years. This humongous fungus sets the record as the largest single living organism on Earth, covering 2,385 acres. It is estimated to weigh as much as 35,000 tons, and it takes 20 to 50 years to kill a tree. Chaga is a bracket fungus most commonly found on branches of mature birch trees, and is believed to suppress cancer progression and enhance your immune system. And looking at grassland mycorrhizal plants. Minchinhampton Common has been owned and managed by the National Trust since 1913. It is at the top of Nailsworth Valley, which is one of the 5 valleys spidering out from Stroud. On some of our tours, we stay in Painswick Valley, which is another of the 5 valleys spidering out from Stroud. On Minchinhampton Common, there are early purple orchids. The best time to see them is in the first 2 weeks of May, so we may catch them if you are joining the tour I'm guiding starting the 10th of May. Orchids need alkaline soils with low fertility to keep aggressive plants like couchgrass and nettles away. The common is on Jurassic limestone, which give the soil its alkaline eligibility to allow growth of these beautiful orchids. Orchids have a symbiotic relationship with mycorrhizal fungi. Orchid seeds do not contain nutrition to support germination. Germination depends entirely on mycorrhizae, which colonize the seeds and supply them with food. The appearance of orchids is visible as evidence of creeping underground mycorrhizae. Like soil bacteria, the mycorrhizae are freeing up essential elements in the soil, such as phosphorus, copper, calcium, magnesium, zinc, and iron, making them available in a form that plants can absorb. So the picture on the right is common ink caps, and this image is from Babington Deer Park near where I live in South Cotswolds. Its mycelium grows outward to form circular fairy rings. The gills, a way for this fungus to disperse their spores, emits a black liquid which was formerly mixed with water and cloves to make ink. Although the common ink cap is edible, it turns to poison in the human system if alcohol is consumed 24 hours either side of consumption. Hence, its popular name is Tippler's Bane. Mycorrhizae and their valuable role in carbon sequestration. Mycorrhizal fungi produce sticky glomalin from carbon extracted from the roots of plants. The glomalin reinforces the hyphae, which is the fungal threads, sealing the channels to prevent leakage and ensuring the efficient transport of distant water and nutrients back to the plant. One of the remarkable features of mycorrhiza is their ability to respond to rising carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere by increasing their production of glomalin, putting more carbon back into the soil. Glomalin improves the structure of our soils, therefore, returning unproductive agricultural land to permanent pasture could be a crucial step in battling against rising carbon dioxide levels. And we'll look at estuaries. So Slimbridge Wildfowl and Wetlands Trust on the Severn Estuary was founded by Sir Peter Scott. He is also the co-founder of the World Wildlife Fund, and he was described by Sir David Attenborough as the patron saint of conservation. And he's responsible for the drawing and the design of the World Wildlife Fund panda logo. We visit Slimbridge on day 5 of our tour. An estuary is where fresh water and saltier seawater meet, and the phases of salinity are the mainstay in the geological definition of an estuary. Sir Peter Scott is a hopeful example of the potential of nurture to connect kids to nature. In his own words, he is a naturalist by the design of his parents. His father, a few days before he died, wrote to his mother saying, "Make the boy interested in natural history if you can. It is better than games." Sir Peter Scott gave up shooting wildfowl in favour of painting them. Slimbridge has reintroduced a population of cranes. The crane is British tallest bird at 4 feet. After years of extinction, there was a small breeding population of pairs found in Norfolk, understood to have been blown off course, plus this reintroduced population at Slimbridge. Not only do they have a spectacular courtship dance, but they are also understood to dance communally, perhaps to diffuse social tensions. The River Severn has the highest tidal range in Europe and the second highest in the world of 15 metres. A possible tidal barrage comes with the complexities of economic and green energy interests versus environmental protection interests. If you want a deeper dive into the ecosystem of the Severn Estuary, check out previous Daily Dose of Nature. From salmon to shipwrecks, discover the secrets of England's Severn. The River Wye feeds into the Severn Estuary at Chepstow. The Wye is renowned as one of the world's greatest salmon rivers. Salmon are andromonious, meaning they migrate to sea to feed and return to freshwater to breed. That's the opposite of the catadromonious eel that migrate down rivers to the sea to spawn. After several winters feasting at the sea, the salmon returns to its native river, where it ceases to feed, yet fights its way upstream over waterfalls and weirs with magnificent muscularity. A mature salmon can jump 9 meters in the air. The salmon's sense for smell is wondrous. The salmon run is led by its nose to its birthplace, to the exact rocks and gravel which its scent was imprinted at birth and marked on its journey to the sea. A salmon life cycle begins as an egg and it hatches into an alveon where it still has a small yolk sac attached on its underside, and then into a self-feeding small fry. At 2 inches long it becomes a parr, and then a smolt as it forms molten silver speckling of its skin for camouflage on the gravelly riverbed. Once the smolt reaches the ocean and completes their adaptation, they rapidly grow into a salmon. The life cycle takes an average of 13 to 15 years from the egg until it's back into its initial home and releases its own eggs or fertilizes them. During 2022, members of the Ross-on-Wye Angling Club caught just 3 salmon, fishing on the waters where Robert Pashley once landed 678 salmon in 1936. Getting into farmland as an ecosystem. Conventional farming continues to champion the use of expensive chemical fertilizers to the neglect of the natural potential of the soil, and considers just 3 basic nutritional elements: nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. as necessary for growing crops, not forgetting the use of chemical pesticides and fungicides, further unbalancing the soil. This is a self-perpetuating cycle of destruction and expensive chemical dependence. Without soil organisms and good soil structure, water and nutrients leach away, and the soil compacts and becomes prone to erosion. In 2014, Farmers Weekly announced we only have 100 harvests left in our country. Sir George Stapledon, who was an English grassland scientist and pioneer environmentalist, in his view, a rotational system not only maintained soil fertility, but it also kept farmers self-sufficient by avoiding the need for chemical fertilizers and imported animal feeds. Mixed farming gave farmers agricultural resilience and stability. Farm Ed is a brilliant educational experience on day 6 of our tour. Farm Ed is situated on the 107-acre Honeydale farm in the Cotswolds. It serves as a centre for regenerative agriculture and sustainable food education. Farm Ed's mission is to accelerate the transition towards regenerative agriculture and sustainable food systems. They have cattle and sheep playing a vital part in the soil restoration and sustainability services. So that's our picture on the left. Knepp Estate, home to Isabella and Charlie Tree, who wrote Wilding, talks of the subsidy system in the UK. This is them speaking. The outgoing system of subsidies had weighted arable crops as the most lucrative, with the result that farmers like us had for decades been motivated to plant them on unsuitable land. With these incentives and subsidies, we had all specialised in creating crops that were globally falling in price as a consequence of oversupply. And now us in England, no longer being a part of the EU, therefore no longer a part of the Common Agricultural Policy, known as CAP, subsidy system, there could be some positive change happening. The Environmental Land Management Scheme, known as ELM, ELM, has the potential for positive environmental impact. The aim is to shift subsidies to have more focus on farms working with environmental benefits. However, this is a difficult one as the life of a farmer is already not an easy life, and keeping up with shifting subsidies creates new challenges and hardships. The role of pastoral farming in regenerative agriculture. Livestock naturally fertilize the land, enriching the soil. Livestock soil compaction improves soil structure and water retention capability, both contributing to sustainable food production. Pasture-fed animals are better for environmental health. Ruminants, which are animals that have 4-chamber stomachs working together to break down fibrous plant material, such as cattle, sheep, deer, when fed on and ingest chemically fertilized ryegrass, this contributes to the increased production of methane in the ruminant's digestive system. Methane emissions are lower in biodiverse pastoral systems, largely because of fumaric acid, which occurs widely in many plants and herbs of the field and hedgerows. Studies show this leads to reducing emissions of methane by 70% when added to the diet of lambs. So pasture-fed on animals are better for human health. The difference between fats put down by livestock pastured on grassland versus grain-fed animals in intensive systems. Fats in pasture-fed animals contain far higher levels of omega-3 fatty acids, DHA, which protects against heart disease and plays a key role in brain function and development. Pasture-fed animals present omega-3 in a balanced ratio with omega-6. Pasture-fed beef, which is the ratios I've got in front of you, study, consistently measures a ratio of 1 to 4, while beef fed on grain measure a ratio of 1 to 6 omega-3 to omega-6, and can be as high as a ratio of 1 to 13. Cattle grazed on pasture show far higher levels of vitamin A and E, and usually double the levels of selenium and beta-carotene, which is the precursor to vitamin A. Humans find the kind of fat that animals put down on grain difficult to metabolize. Organic farming. So these are pictures from in the south Cotswold village of Badminton. My mum runs a chemical-free small market garden called Forbidden Fruit and Veg, producing high-quality vegetables naturally from a 1.5-acre walled garden. They promote sustainability through skill-based veg growing, harvesting and sales. They provide the wider local community with seasonal vegetables grown to organic principles. And Duchy Home Farm, which is part of Highgrove, King Charles's country estate since 1985, which you will visit on your tour depending on whether the King is in residence. The lead gardener there, Fred, supplies my mum's organic market garden veg boxes with produce when they are in limited supply in the garden. Albert Howard, a founding figure in the modern organic farming movement and a passionate spokesman for mycorrhizal fungi. In the 1940s, he argued that the widespread application of chemical fertilizers and fungicides would disrupt mycorrhizal associations. He warned the consequences of such breakdown would be far-reaching. Magical studies have shown that some fungi show amazing potential to mitigate damages caused by humankind on the planet. Some fungi are able to degrade pesticides such as chlorophenols, synthetic dyes, the explosives TNT and RDX, crude oil, some plastics, and a range of human veterinary drugs not removed by wastewater treatment plants, from antibiotics to synthetic hormones. If you are a birder or twitcher, you may most notably enjoy the falconry experience and the dawn chorus walk, listening to morning bird songs, both of which happen on site at one of the beautiful hotels that you stay at depending on the itinerary. In England, we have experienced a long-term decline in farmland birds, such as the skylark, grain partridge and turtle dove, due to the changing in farming practices. Loss of mixed farming systems, instead favouring crop monocultures and the use of chemical fertilizers. In addition to spring, conventional farms now have autumn sowing of arable crops. Farm birds value the stubble on fields as this protects them from the predators in the sky, like the kestrel, who may be less willing to plunge into the fearsome spikes. The increasing use of pesticides also kills the food that the birds eat. Farming in England in the Middle Ages. The open field system of farming survived from the post-Roman period until the 17th century. The ridge and farrow is an archaeological pattern of ridges and troughs created by a system of farming used in Europe during the Middle Ages. The above right photo shows the past evidence of the ridge and farrow history and an indication that land was not ploughed since then. This picture was taken outside Hidcote Gardens, which you will visit on day 7 of your Cotswold tour. At the end of the ridge and farrow system came the Enclosure Acts and presented a new landscape. Georgian enclosure was the removal of common folk's right to grow food, collect wood, and graze animals. This injustice deprived the common folk of their traditional rights of access and usage that these people had depended on for their survival. The name Minchinhampton Common is a direct link to the past, where the common folk had grazing rights on the common, as was the custom in the open field system before enclosure. Why the change? Self-sufficient open field farming stood in the way of maximising productivity and the profit to be made through the highly lucrative wool trade at the time. This led to landowners privatising and limiting access to the land via Enclosure Acts. Enclosure Acts were one of the main contributors to the Industrial Revolution, as small farmers and community members were forced to migrate to cities and towns, offering work in factories and mines. If you are interested, do check out previous Daily Dose of Nature, the good, the bad, and the woolly ups and downs of England's sheep history, as Heather and Leanne talk so eloquently about it. So the silver lining. Enclosure came with the wildlife-loving hedges. 600,000 miles of them. Hedges were planted to pen in livestock, the sheep for the booming wool trade, and to boundary private land. As of 2024, England has approximately 400,000 miles of hedgerows. The great ripping out of hedges in the 1960s and the 1970s was a harm against ecology. It is estimated that 120,000 miles of hedgerow were removed. Even in conventionally farmed arable fields, which are chemically sprayed and ploughed, margins are kept around the hedges to help protect the roots and structure of the hedge, and are typically protected from chemicals sprayed on the fields. The national hedgerow, therefore, offers a key ecosystem service, acting as a linear woodland, a wildlife reservoir, a hedgehog oasis, and a free food stall for all, with its function to pen in livestock, act as a windbreak to provide protection for the soil and animals, and mitigate flooding. This is the free food along the hedgerows for humans and animals. So the elderflower, which is that white flower in the bottom right, you will be served elderflower cordial, which is often a favourite amongst Nat Hab guests, and may be the first time for some of you. And then they turn into elderberries in the autumn. So autumnal elderberries are very high in vitamin C and helps prevent flus and colds. The seeds contain cyanide, so do not eat too many. Blackberries have high antioxidant, which is the top right, have high antioxidant and anti-inflammatory and antimicrobial properties, and they contain vitamins A, C, and E, and they're good for the heart and brain health, and young leaves can be eaten in the spring. Wild garlic, which we saw earlier, and that's my mum picking the wild garlic there. It's a good blood cleanser. It reduces high blood pressure and cholesterol levels and can be made into a yummy pesto. Wild mustard garlic, which is the bottom left, is good in salads and it acts as a blood cleanser. Dandelion, also good in salads, the leaf and blood cleanser. And the hawthorn, which is the berry in the middle at the top, is a remedy for all problems of the heart, such as regulating blood pressure. Young leaves are good for salad. Berries are best after the frost because it sweetens them. Young beech leaves, which is the top left, have that citrus flavour, and they're good in salads. And nettles that I don't have a picture of, but incredibly nutritious, are best eaten as tender shoots and served to cleanse the blood. They ease the pain from rheumatism and arthritis and clear dandruff. And if I'm on tour with you, I eat a raw nettle. It's not actually that impressive, but anyone else can do it. But they're very stingy nettles. But anyway, parkland is our final habitat that we're going to look at. These pictures were taken from Badminton Deer Park, which, like Broadway Tower, contains red deer, which are native to the UK. Both parks were designed by Capability Brown, whose real name is Lancelot Brown, but as a landscape architect was known to approach landowners and say, "Your land has the capability to be extraordinary." Park's popularity came at the time of the Norman invasion and came back in vogue at the time of Capability Brown from the 16th century. The park was a status symbol, an evidence of opulence, to give guests and workers the gift of venison. During the rutting season, which is the autumnal mating season, you will find small groups of stags, those who were unsuccessful in the deer rut for the privilege to reproduce with the does. In England, a bachelor party is instead called a stag do, getting its namesake from these collection of stags. Deers have antlers. Unlike horns that are made from keratin and are permanent, antlers are composed of bone and are regrown each year. With the shedding process, males cast their antlers between April and May, and the new growth is complete by August-September. Lacking martial headgear, the stags will form peaceful fraternities. One of the deer park's silver lining is preserving England's oaks. England has more ancient oaks, that is oaks over 400 years old, than all other European countries combined. The nation's single greatest concentration of ancient oaks lies in the deer park at Blenheim Palace, which has 112 ancient oaks. Blenheim's grounds were also designed by Capability Brown and is the only non-royal palace in the UK. Infamous English deer poacher of the past include Robin of Locksley, the legendary outlaw of Sherwood Forest. An oak's roots spread way beyond the drip line of the leaves, to a distance of up to 2.5 times the radius of its crown. With oxygen available in the soil only relatively close to the surface, the majority of the tree's roots are found in the top 12 inches and are therefore vulnerable to ploughing and compaction of the heavy machinery. And archaic as the British way may be with generational land ownership and primogeniture, that's the right of succession belonging to the firstborn son, The landowning aristocracy had afforded some protection for oaks as the source of the acorn that would see their deer and wild boar through the winter. Napoleonic code of inheritance saw the end of aristocratic estates in France and many other European countries, thus the demise of oak populations. The Wars of the Roses, known at the time and in following centuries as the Civil Wars, were a series of wars fought for the control of the English throne from 1455 to 1487. Winning battles often gave dividends of land and property. George R. Martin acknowledged that Game of Thrones and the land of Westeros was based partly on the Wars of the Roses amongst other periods in Britain. In England, centuries of peace, primogeniture, and the continuation of medieval deer parks as a source of pleasure for the nobility in the context of their stately homes underpinned our ancient oak survival. And the controversial one of hunting. Hunting groups are increasingly articulating themselves as pro-conservation and anti-industrialized agriculture. Modern fox hunting was born out of the dissatisfaction with deer hunting. Hunting brought change to the British landscape, since the fox needed cover to breed and feed. A small area of trees were encouraged and gorse coverts planted, habitats that gave both the fox and its rabbity staple meal sanctuary. And grouse moors, which are found mostly in the North England and Scotland. Grouse hunting advocates maintain that properly keeped the ground by controlling predators produces bounties of birds of all sorts. So, the single-minded focus on yield has incurred steep environmental costs and damages to future farming profits. I hope this presentation hasn't come across as too pessimistic. Aldo Leopold said almost a century ago, "One of the penalties of an ecological education is that one lives alone in a world of wounds." Pope Francis writes, "We have come to see ourselves as lords and masters of the earth, entitled to plunder her at will. The sickness evident in the soil, in the water, in the air, and in all forms of life are symptoms that reflect the violence present in our hearts. We have forgotten that we ourselves are dust on the earth, that we breathe her air and receive life from her waters. There are hope." This photo is from the Knepp estate in West Sussex, home to Isabella and Charlie Tree. It's undergone 20 years of rewilding and has shown how pockets of rewilded land can serve as vital ecosystem services. From soil restoration, carbon sequestration, flood protection, provision of food, fresh water, and increased biodiversity. Atharva Vada said, "Upon this handful of our soil, our survival depends. Husband it, and it will grow our food, our fuel, our shelter, and surround us with beauty. Abuse it, and the soil will collapse and die, taking humanity with it." And Franklin D. Roosevelt said, "The nation that destroys its soil destroys itself." So how do we connect human nature to be more motivated to protect and preserve natural landscapes? Maybe by people feeling, knowing, and understanding its value for oneself, society, and the environment. Narratives dating back 2 millennia and across cultures describe natural settings as places of refuge and comfort in times of physiological stress. Creators have championed its ability to inspire awe and wonder, serenity and peace, and scientists have proven its healing and restorative qualities. Some studies. The stress reduction theory studies monitoring blood pressure and heart rates have shown stress reduction of individuals in nature versus in urban environments. Attention restoration theory. Studies have shown involuntary effortless attention, or also known as soft fascination, is capable of restoring our direct attention. Phytoncides are naturally occurring chemical compounds secreted by plants and animals. Exposure has been correlated with increased hours of sleep and decreased stress levels. Breathing in these substances have been shown to significantly increase the number of natural killer cell activity, which are signs of a healthy immunity. So really tune into the smells when you're in nature, from the wet leaves to the pine to the lavender. Sunlight. Serotonin levels are higher on sunny days, and serotonin is commonly associated with feelings of well-being and happiness. We boost our vitamin D levels from sunlight. Vitamin D deficiency is linked to a number of physical and mental health issues, including tiredness, bone and back pain, and depression. Soil bacteria. Studies have shown that Mycobacterium vaccae in the soil activate groups of neurons in the brain responsible for serotonin production. So if you do enjoy going out into the garden, don't wear garden gloves. Much better to get your hands in the soil. Forest bathing, which is widely practiced in Japan, is the immersing of yourself in a forest or a natural environment to improve your well-being. It has gained popularity worldwide as a way to promote health and reconnect with the natural environment. And just a couple of quotes, I'll just read the Beethoven one. How happy am I to be able to walk among the shrubs, the trees, the woods, the grass, and the rocks. For the woods, the trees, and the rocks give man the resonance he needs. So the amazing conservation charity, the National Trust, raison d'etre is to look after places of historic interest or natural beauty permanently for the benefit of the nation across England, Wales, and Northern Ireland. As the third largest landowner in the United Kingdom, the Trust owns almost 620,000 acres, that's 250,000 hectares of land, and 780 miles of coast. Its properties include more than 500 historic houses, castles, archaeological and industrial monuments, gardens, parks, and nature reserves. It was founded in 1895, and their aim was not only to save important sites, but to open them up for everyone to enjoy. Most properties are open to the public for a charge. Members have free entry, while open spaces are free to all. The Trust has an annual income of over 680 million, largely from membership subscriptions, donations, and legacies, direct property income, profits from its shops, restaurants, and investments. Some of the National Trust sites we visit is Broadway Tower, which is the one on the left, Hidcote House and Gardens, which is the one in the middle, Chedworth Roman Villa, which is the mosaic in the bottom right, Minchinhampton Common, which we saw a picture of earlier, and Arlington Row in Bybury, which is the top right. It is believed that Henry Ford, founder of Ford Motors, was so taken with Arlington Row that he tried to buy the entire row of cottages so that he could dismantle them brick by brick and ship them back to America. As they are Grade 1 listed buildings, this was far from possible. So we are all on a journey of constant improvement. Do what you can, when you can, with what you have. The concept of think globally, act locally urges people to consider the health of the entire planet by taking action in their own communities and cities. We can see the value of a multi-pronged approach to conservation, working with humanity and economics. Some examples we've touched on. The positive impact through consumer choices in everyday life. By choosing to spend money buying chemical-free produce, you are not only supporting your health, but you are also supporting businesses that align with a healthy environment. We looked at the positive impact of conservation charities. We have covered how accessibility to natural spaces affects our personal well-being, contributing to increased connection to nature, thus may serve to reconnect people to want to preserve and protect nature. England has approximately 90,500 miles of public footpaths, which I know you don't have in the US. These footpaths are legally protected rights of way, allowing the public to walk across private lands. They form an extensive network that provides access to the countryside and connects various regions across the country. As a trekker and runner and someone who needs their daily dose of nature, these public footpaths and open access lands in beautiful locations are such a joy to experience and share. Thank you for listening, and I hope you feel inspired to want to explore the Cotswolds soon with either Hattie, Andy, or myself.
Thank you so much, Bella. Now, before we dive into those questions, I would like to remind everyone that you can submit your questions via the question field in your control panel. So, Bella, at what time of year does Nat Hab run their Cotswold trips?
They run them May, so the shoulder season, so May, June, and September. And I'll double check if I can get back to anyone. I know that that's when my tours are, but they may do them throughout the summer as well.
And how long is the trip? How many days?
It's 8 days, so you can get there a bit before and enjoy a few more days in Oxford, staying at the wonderful hotel, the Randolph. But then we join you on day one, which is a Saturday, and then you leave us on a Saturday the week later. 8 days.
Gotcha. And how large of a group are we going to be on this trip with?
Um, it depends. I think there's 12 is max. Yeah, 12 is max, but just depends on numbers that you could book on with.
Gotcha. Thanks. Well, that's about all the questions that we actually do have for today. So I'm going to throw it back to you for any closing comments you may have for us today, Bella.
Just I hope to be able to share what the beauty and the places that I love um, this year or next year. Hopefully meet you one day.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Bella, for taking the time to present for us today. And I'd also like to thank everyone who joined us today. If you are interested in information on how you can travel to see the Cotswolds with NatHab, please give us a call at 800-543-8917, or you can send us an email at info@nathab.com. Our adventure specialists are happy to help you out. And if you're part of a photo club and would like NatHab to speak to your members about nature and travel photography, email us at webinars@nathab.com. Join us Monday for our next daily dose of nature. You can check out next week's lineup, including registration links, on our website at nathab.com/webinars. We did record today's presentation, and we will have the replay available on our website soon. With that, I will conclude today's webinar. Goodbye, everybody. We'll see you next time.